With the November election fast approaching, we continue to bring you the perspectives of legislative and party leaders. Minnesota, now considered by many analysts to be a swing state, last supported a Republican presidential candidate in 1972. This week, I spoke with the chair of the Minnesota DFL party, Ken Martin, and I began by asking him if the Biden-Harris ticket can win in Minnesota.
I think the answer to that is yes. Of course, with 42 days left, anything can happen. So, if polls were 100% accurate, we'd be having a different conversation right now. We'd be talking about Hillary Clinton's reelection. So the reality is as my old mentor and friend Paul Wellstone used to say, we run like we're 20 points behind, even if we're 20 points ahead. And I'll tell you, I wouldn't trade our position with the Republicans right now on all accounts, whether it's the ground game, the air game in terms of the number of ads that we're running, the conversations we're having with voters. Certainly all signs point to a victory on November 3rd, but we're going to continue to work like we're behind. Now, look, it shouldn't surprise anyone, given the 2016 election results here, that Minnesota is a critical battleground. Donald Trump and the Republicans have put Minnesota in the crosshairs. And when you think about Donald Trump, he's a little bit of a trophy collector. He collects trophy wives, trophy properties. There's no bigger trophy for a Republican running for president than to flip Minnesota, which has the longest streak of any voting for the Democratic presidential nominees. So we expect a really busy next 42 days with lots of principal visits by both sides, lots of money and time spent in this state by both campaigns, and it's going to be a crazy ride.
The death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and now the sudden vacancy on the Supreme Court has the potential to energize both Democrats and Republicans in this election. Do you believe that her death will impact Minnesota races?
Well, at this point, it's certainly an unknown. I will tell you that in the days since Justice Ginsburg passed away, we've seen an outpouring of support from both donors and volunteers on our side who are really concerned about what this means for the future of this country, and in particular concerned about issues like the Affordable Care Act. And as you know, that is a critical program that really hangs in the balance that the courts could decide on. And no one in this state or in this country wants to go back to the days when those with pre-existing conditions were not covered by health insurance, or where young people had to go without health care, where we didn't have accessible or affordable health care throughout this country, and we had premiums skyrocketing. The reality is that I think most folks understand the consequences of a court that has been completely packed by Republicans and by conservatives, and what impact it would have on their lives. And that's why you've seen the type of outpouring of support that we've seen since Justice Ginsburg's death.
As you know, all 201 legislative seats are up for grabs in November. The Senate Republicans currently hold the majority, 35-32. The House is controlled by the DFL by a larger margin, 75-59. What is the DFL message that will enable the party to gain control of the Senate, maintain control of the House, and with Governor Walz in the executive office, have complete control of Minnesota's government next year?
Well, the message is simple. Here in Minnesota, we pride ourselves on having one of the best education systems in the country. But because of Republicans in the legislature over the years, both when they were in the majorities, but also now when they continue to stand in the way of education funding, we have slipped in this state, and slipped quite dramatically. There was a time and a day when Republicans and Democrats came together to actually address issues like education. In fact, the Minnesota Miracle, which passed in 1970, wasn't just passed by Democrats. It was Republicans as well, who understood that if we wanted to be more than just a cold sort of flyover state, we had to invest in education and invest in a world-class education system. And for years, both Republicans and Democrats did that. But now in recent years, the Republicans have been obstinate and intransigent on that issue. The reality is Minnesotans, over the course of our history as a state, have wanted divided government more than they wanted one-party control. And the idea was that by having divided government, it would result in a better outcome for Minnesotans. Both sides will be forced to come together and figure out solutions to the issues that Minnesotans faced. But that's not working that way anymore. And just recent examples of that in the last legislative session, where you didn't see a bonding bill passed by Republicans. which, unfortunately has cost us thousands of jobs in this state, and also investments in critical infrastructure projects that many communities throughout Minnesota have been waiting years to have taken place. So, the reality is it's those issues that I think are really frustrating right now when you have divided government and one side who's drawn a line in the sand and refusing to do even the basic sort of core functions of government that we've always relied on here in this state, like funding our education system and passing bonding bills. The only way, unfortunately, that's going to be solved is by making sure that we put DFLers in control of government. The last time that we had complete control of government in 2012 to 2014, we saw an amazing amount of legislation passing that actually moved the ball forward for Minnesotans. It helped improve people's lives, and it helped strengthen our communities throughout the state. That's really what it's going to take, unfortunately. I know Minnesotans want divided government, but divided government is not working for them or for their families.
In an email to J. Patrick Coolican of the Daily Reformer, former DFL Senate leader Tom Bach from the Iron Range said, quote, "Democratic operatives have moved on to more ideological issues, and it resonates with fewer rural people," end quote. According to Bach, it isn't that Northeast Minnesota has moved right, but rather that the DFL talks less about labor and jobs. Blue-collar jobs, that is, and that losing your job in a rural area can have a dire impact on a family than in a metro area. So can the DFL win rural Minnesota votes generally and Iron Range votes specifically?
Well, look, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in what Senator Bach said there, but there is a lot that I agree with, and in particularly a focus on the economy and jobs. As Rudy Perpich used to say famously, it's all about the jobs, 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 and really focusing in on the fact that our party has always been in favor of job creation and in favor of unions and in favor of blue-collar workers and making sure that people are supported in this state. And, it's one thing that someone like Paul Wellstone, who is a progressive, also understood. What unites a corn and soybean farmer in southern Minnesota and an Iron Ranger in northeastern Minnesota and an immigrant in the inner cities? It's this idea of the American dream, the idea that if you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to build a better life for yourself and your family, and leave your family better off than where you started. And that American dream is the underpinning, I think, of what's always made this country great. And a big focus of that is making sure that we focus on those bread and butter issues that really drive anxiety in this country right now amongst people, not just in greater Minnesota, but throughout the state. It's jobs and the economy. It's healthcare, of course. It's people worrying about how they send their kids off to college and afford it. Those are the issues that are giving people heartburn. And while we tend to focus on a lot of the controversial issues, the reality is it's those kitchen table issues that ultimately are going to decide this election, and they always do. And I agree wholeheartedly with Senator Bach that we as a party need to continue to focus on those issues, those kitchen table issues that people are talking about with their family members.
The civil unrest that followed the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, the defund the police mantra that followed, and then the uptick in violent crime that's happened over the summer have prompted Republican candidates to really emphasize their party's support for law enforcement and a law and order platform. What is the DFL position on public safety?
Well, I think you saw that in the legislative session. It was DFLers who actually put forward a number of bills to make sure that our public safety system actually worked on behalf of the people that it's supposed to. I don't know many DFLers that favor abolishing the police or even defunding the police. I think most of the DFLers in the legislature, and frankly, most DFL elected officials in this state, believe that we need to strengthen our public safety, and we need to reimagine our public safety. We need to make sure that our policing and all other forms of public safety are actually working in the best interest of the people that they're supposed to protect and serve. And so when we talk about reimagining public safety, we're talking about making sure that we have more mental health professionals on the police force, right? That we have more social workers on the police force, because not every incident that the police are called into requires a sort of violent interaction or any sort of altercation, right? Oftentimes we need those situations to be de-escalated and diffused, and having people who are trained in that and people who understand that from a social worker perspective or a mental health perspective is what's needed on police forces around this state. The DFL stands with law enforcement, but we also realize that there is a real need to make sure that we don't see any more Black men murdered in the street by the police. We need to make sure that there's reform and accountability. And that's what happened this summer with the proposals that were put forward.
And just briefly, one more question, if you can answer quickly. Critics are crying hypocrisy because peaceful protests were allowed during this COVID-19 environment that we're in, and yet restrictions remain on worshiping and businesses. Are you concerned about a backlash or anger and frustration because of how the pandemic has been handled?
Well, look, Shannon, we sit here today with over 200,000 Americans who've died from this virus and a president who's knowingly lied to the American public about how dangerous this virus was from the very beginning. We need leaders in this state and country, frankly, who are going to be honest with the public and actually put policies in place that will keep all of us safe and protect all of us. And while I know that these are sacrifices that all of us have to make, I trust the governor, as do many Minnesotans, if you believe recent polling, trust the governor and legislative leaders to make the decisions that are going to keep all of us safe. Look, we all want to get back to the days of sort of normal life where we can go to church services, we can go out to sporting events, we can go out to dinner with our friends and others. But the reality is right now we're all called to a greater purpose, all of us, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or independent or none of them. We all have to realize that we have to make sacrifices at this time if we want to actually beat this. You know, George Bush said this over Memorial Day weekend, and I found it really profound, and I was not a big supporter of his, but he said, look, the differences between us right now as Democrats and Republicans are so small compared to what we're facing head on. And Americans have always faced every crisis by coming together as one people, as one country to tackle whatever crisis we're facing head on. And that's what it's going to take. We need to set partisanship at the door because this is not a partisan issue. We need to realize that we all have to come together in a meaningful way, make the sacrifices we're asked to if we're going to beat this virus.